Welcome, Anne Marie. How are you doing?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, AC. I'm doing well. Yeah, happy almost spring. This
Happy
is
almost.
exciting.
I think tomorrow is tomorrow the official day of the first day of spring.
Mm-hmm. I believe so. The equinox.
So yeah, I can jump in at any point. I don't know if you want to make any announcements. You're always so great at setting the container. Oh, those are
No,
cool. Those are really cool.
Wow.
would
Cool.
make a
So
very
you're
fashionable hat.
on cabbage. So
That's it for me.
so awesome.
How did you just procure that so fast? You just like whipped it up, went outside and grabbed some and brought it in?
I shot it out.
Earlier on the call, he was saying that he was harvesting today. So
Gotcha.
if you want Ashley to jump in and share on perimenopause, and then maybe afterwards, since this group kind of has like a rapport and we know each other already, like or most of us, maybe afterwards we can do like an intro where we say like our name and a little bit about us and then ask a question or add something. I brought some books. So I have like a book show and tell. I don't know. So maybe other people have brought an article or questions and specifics, and then we can kind of open up the floor to everyone else. But for now, do you want to get us started, Ashley?
Sure, we can. We can do that unless, I mean, if people want to say their name now, I mean, that would be a great way to kind of
Okay. Yeah,
in
we can start with just like name and yeah, like where we're from and
what we're
uh
harvesting.
yeah, what we're excited about harvesting this spring. Sounds great.
Seven song. I'm not sure what I'm going to harvest later this spring, but skunk cabbage has been on my mind for a couple of years.
Ashley, New Paltz, New York. And I am really very excited for cleavers and violets. Last year for the first time I made a cleavers moon infusion, like overnight. I put it outside in cold water. It was so good. It was just so good. So I can't wait to see cleavers popping up.
Hello again. I'm Anne Marie. I live in Kingston, New York, and I always love harvesting nettle, and I would like to harvest some grape leaves. That's for some reason been thinking of doing that to make dolmas, and I need some more Japanese knotweed root also. So,
I'm Jess. I'll jump on the nettle train. I feel like spring gets so busy that sometimes I miss them, which is terrible. So I'm looking forward to not missing them this year.
same, I second that.
Third, yes. Nettles was in my mind as well. And I'm also looking forward to seeds, to getting stuff actually in the ground.
Yeah. My name's AC and I'm in central New York near Cooperstown. And I just looked out in the garden to see like who was popping up and the lemon balm was just looking so green. It was just these tiny little leaves. So I'm really excited about my lemon balm patch expanding this year and getting some more roots. Japanese knotweed is on the list, which is kind of like a pain to dig up unless you have like a backhoe or something. So maybe we can have like a root digging Japanese knotweed digging party or something and do it together because it's such a pain. Sweet. All right. I think that's everyone here. So thank you, Ashley.
Of course. Let me see, do I have screen sharing? I do. Awesome.
And I can start a Google Doc to take notes and I'll share it in the chat. And anybody else who wants to just add things to the notes can also access it. And feel free to like type in there if I missed something.
Let me see. Oh, good. I was doing this like up, I feel like I was up to like just doing this right now, last minute kind of. I had my notes, but then I wanted to I set a goal last time to make a PowerPoint. So I did. Not the, you know, because thank you for holding me accountable without knowing it. Just by me saying it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. All right. So let me tell you what the plan is that I wanted to share. the definition of perimenopause, hormonal changes of perimenopause, the common challenges of perimenopause, and then the foundations of health. This is the part I feel most passionate about and what I feel like I have the most knowledge about, because through the clinic I've worked with just so many women on perimenopause and I see that it's the whole picture. So we'll spend a while on that slide, and then the herbal and botanical support for perimenopause, and then we can open it up and any questions, any sharings, any thoughts, if there's anything that's applicable that you feel like you want to bring to it, that will really be beautiful to make it more of a round table at that point. So jumping in, the definition of perimenopause, it can start at different times, but often it's the early 40s, and that would be like the early perimenopause. And then the period of 5 years before menopause, which is really just a day. Like menopause is the point in time where menstruation has ceased for 12 months. And then it's postmenopause after that. Like a lot of people are like, oh, I'm in menopause, but it's more like a time, and then you move on. Now, of course, sometimes there's been times where I've seen people with like hormonal replacement therapy where they're like dip back in again, and then they have to start over with, okay, now when it's a full 12 months, it's menopause. So as it is for people that have uteruses and bleed on a cycle, the hormones are a little bit of a circus. It's like, it's just never exactly point A to point B, and here it is, here we are. But there's patterns and there are phases. So in early perimenopause, what we'll often see is the cycle length shortening because ovulation isn't happening every cycle. And then in late perimenopause, the flow changes can point to what's going on. There can be short bleeding, there can be spotting episodes, there can even be flooding, which can lead to iron loss and making it hard for people to find that balance. So you can learn a lot about what's going on with you or your client or person you're working with in perimenopause by what is happening with their cycle. So that's something to really dig into. And we'll get into labs for this just in case that's of interest. Just to get a little bit more granular with the hormonal changes of perimenopause, one thing that's really tricky is that estrogen is very variable. It can be really up sometimes and really down. So estrogen can make people feel all different kinds of things. So high levels can make a person feel bloated. They could have breast tenderness and heavy bleeding. And this is common in perimenopause where we see estrogen dominance, where there's more irritability. People are feeling like almost like if, PMS symptoms, but more intense and with less of a rhythm to it. And this high level of estrogen can also lead to low-grade inflammation. So people are feeling more pain, more discomfort, and there's usually an uptick of this in the perimenopausal years. And because of the way our environment is, there are a lot of exogenous estrogen in the environment that can impact estrogen dominance and make people feel even more like the estrogen is high. So the way to balance that can be addressed through different means, but when we'll look at those different things. Now, low levels of estrogen can occur more in menopause. And when that happens, we do see a lot of hot flashes, night sweats, palpitations, headaches, insomnia, fatigue, bone loss, and vaginal dryness. So that's the low estrogen. But sometimes people will have low estrogen for a cycle and then they'll have higher estrogen. So it's not always going to be steady. After menopause occurs, that's when estrogen really does drop. But it's during the perimenopausal years where it's like a little bit of a roller coaster where people are feeling a lot going on and not always able to name how or what is happening. One of the best things to do to help with this is to kind of keep an eye on the progesterone. Progesterone is the balancer. Like if you think of a seesaw, the progesterone balances the high estrogen levels. So that can decrease within perimenopause because it comes from the breakdown of the corpus luteum. And if there's not ovulation every cycle and there's not egg production every cycle, then there's not going to be as much progesterone. So that's why we do see a lot of estrogen dominance in the perimenopausal years. So again, we'll get into how to deal with this balance. Now, FSH and LH actually increase because they're coming in to try to help create a viable egg. As the estrogen's dropping, they're trying to help make a viable egg. Another thing that can be not as obvious or talked about, but testosterone can drop for people. And when testosterone drops in perimenopause, there's a marked loss of energy, motivation, and stamina. A lot of people will say, oh, like loss of libido or, low energy. Those are the big things. But what it really affects is building muscle and creating that kind of stamina that you need to get things done. So testosterone dropping can have an impact that people don't really realize that's happening, that it's happens a lot for women and not just men. As we want to assess perimenopause through labs, some really easy ways to do it with just getting a primary care physician to go ahead and write the lab. You could just test for the FSH and LH to see if they're rising. Or you can also track the progesterone and estrogen levels. Like if you were to do it once a year, you could see what's happening there. You would probably, if you are cycling, you would want to do the same time in your cycle, like day 19 through 21, so that you could really get a marked kind of like if you're putting it on a graph, you want to see what's happening. But a good clinician can read those labs no matter what. But I really like to see the day 19 through 21 information for the progesterone and estrogen. So there's multiple challenges of perimenopause. And the body composition change is a big one because there's a reduced sensitivity to exercise and a reduced sensitivity to protein. And what I see a lot in clinic is people who are exercising more and eating less, and it just backfires because then they're creating a situation where they're putting their body in stress, and their body is then, if they're trying to lose weight, it's not going to let them because the body's wise and it's in a state of survival and it wants to hold on to whatever fat is on the body. So it perceives, an HPA axis threat. Too much exercise, like all these people who are doing like the Orange Theories or the boot camps, if they're doing that and eating less, what they really need to be doing is kind of slowing down, building muscle, and eating more protein. Because the protein synthesis is not happening as much. Estradiol is circulating, so there's a decrease in what's being stimulated. And then it can lead to the increased fat, whether it's subcutaneous or visceral, which is the more dangerous kind of fat around the organs. And then there's a decreased bone density. So again, most of this, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but think strength training. Think lifting heavy things, whether you're a farmer, whether you have kids and you can pick them up, whether you have grandkids, whatever stage in life, just challenge yourself or challenge the people that you're working with to safely lift heavy things. And building that muscle and supporting that with protein is a really great way to work with the body composition. Metabolism does change. There's a decrease in insulin resistance. There's a reduction in the ability to pull the glucose into the adipose tissue and muscle. And because of that, it's better, people are using a decrease of carbs. There's not as much needed for amino acids. There's a higher sympathetic drive, which increases cortisol and can lead to loss of lean mass. It breaks down and there's less ability to build it back up. So we want to address the metabolism by making sure that meals are regular and that they're well balanced. And a big thing that I see with people who are going through perimenopause is they're just like having a hard time with memory retention. Words, different things are not easy for them to grab, and it's frustrating for them. They feel like there's brain fog. And this does come from a misstep in serotonin and tryptophan. Estrogen does cross the blood-brain barrier, and what it does is it kind of, when you think of an SSRI, it helps with the reuptake of serotonin. But what happens is we're having an excess of serotonin in these situations. So the tryptophan is increasing the serotonin, and the loss of estrogen that can happen can make it really hard for people, and they get a serotonin dump, which can really result in depression and anxiety. And that's a common thing that I see where people are just very anxious all of a sudden. And maybe they've been anxious in their life before, or maybe it's new, but either way, it's pretty intense and they're feeling like it's hard to sleep. Maybe they're having some racing heart symptoms, things like that. So those are the biggest challenges I see. And then there's symptoms that we can talk about too. We'll get to that. But I would say this is the slide where I really want to focus on what we can do that isn't herbal. The foundations of health in perimenopause and beyond really become pretty clear in the 40s for women about what's really important to do. And balanced nutrition and hydration are huge. Getting enough water helps with cellular health, helps keep the pathways of detoxification open, helps for you to absorb nutrients from food. So the balanced nutrition would look like making sure there's enough protein. So I would say just on average, about 90 grams of protein a day. So that's looking at each meal and making sure there's like a cup and a half of legumes or 4 to 6 ounces of a lean meat or chicken or fish. And the other piece of that is really making sure to get enough fiber, which most of the people that I see are not getting enough fiber. And enough fiber would be like 30 to 50 grams of fiber a day from plants. It can be different seeds, it can be mushrooms, it can be fruit, vegetables, grain, complex carbs like squash, sweet potatoes. I like to challenge people to do like a 30 different plant a week food challenge so that they're looking at color, looking at texture, and really trying to get their fiber that way. And that just helps keep everything regular, keep everything moving, and it binds to that excess estrogen and helps bring it out of the body, which is so important. Of course, nourishment for the stress response system. A lot of the people who are dealing with perimenopause are in a stage in their life where they're juggling a lot. It might be their parents' health, it might be children's health, and it's their job, making sure things are running well. And I will tell you across the board, I talk to people and they're like, oh, I'm not stressed. And what I do love about working with labs is that you can see in the labs how imbalanced their cortisol levels are, which is really validating for a lot of women because they're sort of been trained from an early age to say yes and do more and be there for people and really show up. And it's hard for them to differentiate that they are actually stressed, and that's not the norm. So really helping our clients to have more mindfulness around stress and whatever helps them to deal with it. For some people, it's breath work and meditation and some of those more yin forms of stress management. And some people really need to get out and hike or climb or punch a punching bag. Like, what is it that's going to help them? And then really kind of reminding people that there's two things. You can look at your list of things to do and figure out what you can take off of it. Is there a job that's really problematic? Is there something that can change there? And then there's things that can't be taken off the table. So how can they have clear boundaries to say no more? And then, of course, with all of this hormonal like circus that's going on, opening up the detoxification pathways is really important. So the liver does so much. We want to really make sure that we're getting those spring herbs to the people we work with, making sure they're getting the bitters, making sure they're getting dandelion. They could be eating broccoli rabe if they want, but dandelion root, things like this for the liver, milk thistle. Being aware of toxins in our environment, kind of coaching people to look at the environmental working group. The ewg.org website is great because they'll let you know what the dirty dozen is each year, like which produce has the most toxins, and the clean 15, which are the ones that you really don't have to worry so much. So just knowing to sometimes I'm surprised that people don't know about the kind of endocrine disruptors that are in their health and body products or their laundry detergents, things like that. helping people realize that, helping them to drink water and balance with a little bit of like natural salt and citrus to really get that electrolyte balance right. Doing some of the really wonderful lymph massages, whether it's like with a gua sha stone or dry brushing or, massage. If you have a friend or partner that they can, you can coach them to do these things, but paying attention to all of these different pathways. And of course, the gut. People need to be moving their bowels every day. And if that's not happening, then we want to work with them, with herbs and nutrition and movement and hydration to make sure that they're doing that so that the toxins are not, and the excess hormones are not kind of sitting there and having to be processed once they've already gone through the liver for detoxification. We want them out of the body. We don't want them to go through again. So cultivating digestive health through the gut microbiome, and that's a lot with the fiber. Like the more plants that a person eats, the more healthy their microbiome is going to be. So really going for different colors, going for different types of plants, and making sure that people are getting, some fermented food or probiotic to help with the digestive health. And sometimes you can see signs of like a leaky gut happening for people where they might need to use some marshmallow or aloe, things like that to help seal the intestines so that there's not food particles getting into the bloodstream. And then, of course, there's lifestyle practices, and there's so much we can talk about there. And, you all know so many of them, but like the sleep, the fresh air. And here again, I put attention to building muscle because that's just so important for this stage of life and beyond, just to make sure that women are really strong into their elder years. They're not going to fall and break a bone. And also the muscles are a metabolic factory. So if there's a strong muscle base, then more calories are going to be burnt. There's going to be more energy. So that's one of the best things that a person can do for themselves. And here we have the herbal support for perimenopause, which I think probably a lot of you have experience with, and I'm really excited for us to talk about these. The list could have been longer, but I do really love black cohosh. Actea is such a good balancer for people, and it can help to take away a lot of the symptoms. It can help with the hot flashes. It can help with kind of irascible moods. There's a lot of good research out there about black cohosh too. So taking that daily can be really supportive. And I am a big fan of shatavari, asparagus racemosus. It's been always such a friend to women in Ayurvedic medicine. And it just can, with sleeplessness, with stress, with hot flashes, it can come in and be really supportive. And that can be used as like a decoction from the root where you're making like a moon milk or a golden milk sort of preparation, or you could take it in a tincture, you could take it as a pill. However, people most identify and feel like it would be a helpful part of their lives. That's how I like to bring Shatavari in for them. And then motherwort is such a helper when it comes to balancing the hormones. If there's somebody who's having heart palpitations because of the perimenopause symptoms, then motherwort is a really good ally for them. And certainly for anxiety, and also for that feeling of just what I described before, like all of the balls in the air that people are trying to balance at this stage in their life. Sometimes motherwort can just take the edge off and make them feel like they're being held a little tighter. Chase tree berry can really help with balancing the hormones. And, this is a star in so many ways. I've seen it work so well with PCOS. I see it really help balance in perimenopause, especially if sometimes people will get excess acne, things like that, more like androgen kind of perimenopausal symptoms. And the chaste tree berry is really helpful there. And I do like it to be a morning dose for chaste tree. And shilajit is something that it's from the Himalayas. I have to look more into the sustainability of it because I haven't done that yet, but I have seen it just be wonderful in practice because it's it helps with that loss of testosterone. So like if somebody was looking to build more energy or have recovery after the gym, or if their testosterone is just low and they're feeling unmotivated, the Shilajit is a really good support for that for them. And sage, of course, is one of my favorites for when people are having really bad night sweats. It has lots of evidence for supporting other symptoms of perimenopause too, like irritability and headaches and things like that. But where I see it as a star is like a kind of, if someone wakes up a lot to go to the bathroom at night, then it's a little bit more problematic. You can't have a whole lot of it, but if somebody could have 4 to 6 ounces of sage before they're going to bed, it can really help with the night sweats. And a great thing to do is, because it's so drying, if they already have a dry constitution, you might work with them to add some more moistening herbs to it and kind of create a tea formula that works well for them. And then more botanical support, which isn't necessarily herbal, is indole 3 carbinol, which is, it's like, it comes from broccoli and cauliflower, like dim, the broccoli sprouts, and it can help with anti-inflammatory properties, but it's really good at helping with estrogen dominance. So that's where I see it a lot when you're seeing a lot of the moodiness, a lot of irritability, people who have tender breasts, breaking out a little bit, those kinds of things, or if they're having like increased PMS, then this would be a good thing to add. And then the L-theanine, it would be considered botanical in a way because it comes from green tea and certain fungus. So it's also an amino acid, and it can help a lot if people are depressed. It can be taken as like a liposomal form in fat, or it can be taken as a pill, and it can help a person to feel more hope. Also, I've seen it work both ways, where it can bring somebody energy so they would take it in the morning and feel happier about their day, or I've seen it work to help relax them at night. So dosage would be dependent on how a person reacts to it, whether it would be an AM or a PM dose. But because it's modulating, it can sometimes work both ways, where it can give some energy in the morning and then help with relaxation at night. And then GABA is a neurotransmitter, so sometimes there's preparations with GABA and L-theanine, and that just kind of helps with what we were talking about the serotonin flooding, where people are feeling really like it's hard for them to find balance with their mood, and they're feeling more anxious or depressed than is comfortable for them. I know there's a lot going on in the world that can make a person feel that way, but I think we all know our ways of managing as best as we can. And when they can't do that, or we can't do that, then GABA can be really helpful as a chemical messenger in the brain to help with more intense depression and anxiety. And that is where I would like to open it up for any questions, any thoughts, anything you want to share.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. That was wonderful.
You are so welcome.
And Seven Song did ask a question in the chat. Seven Song, do you want to ask your question?
Yes. So Ashley, with all the difficulty with building muscle mass, is that due to a loss of testosterone, or is it a combination of factors?
Yes, it is. It's a combination of the testosterone not being there as much. The estrogen too is helpful in building muscle. So as estrogen decreases, not only is it harder to build muscle, but people are more prone to muscular injuries. So they do have to be a little bit more careful with the exercises they're doing as that's happening. I think the term is like sarconogenesis or something. There's a term for it when you're losing muscle, but it does result from those hormonal changes, especially from those two, the testosterone and the estrogen.
Do you ever recommend testosterone supplement? What do you think of testosterone supplements?
Well, I always prefer going as natural as possible, but in the clinic, there's a lot of, we do bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, so a lot of people are taking a testosterone cream that is based on, it's made from wild yam. That's what they're, even though I know you think wild yam progesterone, but they're building these bioidenticals from wild yam. So I feel better about that, but I still feel that by using a shilajit kind of thing, or cordyceps is really good for building testosterone. So I really like to try first with those two, the shilajit and the cordyceps, to see if that will do it. But I do know people and work with people who are getting like testosterone implants, and they're, that's like the next step. We don't do that in my clinic, but a lot of functional medicine clinics are doing that. And they're thrilled because they're building muscle and feeling so strong. So, it's kind of a long answer. I like to start with the most simple and basic thing that we can do, but if it makes somebody's quality of life better and they're able to be stronger and feel better about themselves, then I think there's a place for that for sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This is such good practice because I get so nervous public speaking. I'm like, oh, these are things I really like. This is fine.
Actually, I have a question about the hormone supplementation, and maybe a related question about contraceptives. Because if you're supplementing hormones, what would be the thought around, I mean, do you use them forever? Do you taper off them? How and why and when,
Questions. Yeah, and a lot of people will just go that route. Like the people who are more into conventional medicine are like taking their over-the-counter birth control, and they just use that throughout perimenopause because it takes care of a lot of these things for them. But yeah, I think that probably they would then get off of it when they're in menopause. And then the thing that would be most supplemented in like after menopause would be estrogen. And that's something that a lot of doctors, like Dr. Mary Claire Haver, is out there talking a lot right now about like doing estrogen supplementation in perimenopause. But the problem is it's so variable, those estrogen levels in perimenopause, that it's really better to start that kind of supplementation after one is already over that menopause point. And then, you know, for the progesterone and the testosterone, it would be more about testing and seeing. It would be really individual about whether somebody needed that or not. But the more dominant thinking is to bring in estrogen replacement again, which we look at the history of that, and it's so varied. And people are saying, don't be scared. Estrogen replacement is really important for a lot of people because it does help with their bone and muscle health. So there's definitely a swing in that direction right now. Does that answer your question?
It does. I guess one of the things that I've seen is how destabilizing it can be for people when they are coming off some kind of hormonal supplementation. And just yeah, so that made me wonder, if there was an approach that would make that easier.
Yeah, and there is, because you can also differentiate. Like someone in perimenopause might be only taking progesterone like day 10 through 25 to kind of help recreate what the body would have been doing. So it's kind of variable depending on age. If somebody's going to come off, it's always better to titrate off of something. But I've seen plenty of people who just are like, I just stopped. And so you want to individualize it for the person, and hopefully they can work closely with you and whoever the prescriber is if they're doing hormones, to really do it more slowly. And then you could bring the herbs in to help support that process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The other thing I'll just put in here, we were talking about sage, and I think sage and shatavari would work great together. Shatavari is so moistening, and I think that would be a lovely pair.
Yeah, I like that. Thanks, Polly. Anybody has any experiences of certain like case study kind of things where they've had somebody who was having a hard time in perimenopause and found something that worked really well? This is a great place to share that as well.
I find Actea. I prefer Actea. I find there's some side effects or adverse effects from both Actea and Vitex, often emotionally, and I find it less with Actea. But it's probably my go-to for pretty much any hot flashes or mostly hot flashes. The emotional component the herbs will just vary depending on whether it's more a lot of sadness or a lot of crying or a lot of anxiety. But Actea has been my go-to. Usually fresh rhizome tinctured.
And what is your standard dose? Like, what would you think is a therapeutic dose of black cohosh or daily?
So usually it's just like 1 milliliter 2 to 3 times a day, and then up to 2 milliliters or more before going to sleep. And then when they wake up with hot flashes, to take another milliliter to 2 milliliters to help. I
Yeah.
haven't really used the sage much. It's a really good idea because the hot flat like that seems to control like the hot of hot flashes, but I'm not sure it really controls so much the sweating of hot flashes. So I'll start. Uh, what would you recommend for a dosage for the salvia?
Oh, well, I really like it as a tea. So I would make a standard infusion of that and have that before bed. And then I would have somebody even keep it by their bed so that if they did wake up with a hot flash, they would have some of that tea. I would say 4 to 6 ounces of a standard infusion, within the hour before bed would be the perfect way I've seen that work the best for the salvia.
And do you think if somebody does have to pee a lot in the night that it would be worth trying like a tincture dose, or do you think part of it is just that infusion?
It's tricky. I have tried a tincture dose and I think it's worth it because I think people relate with plants in all different ways. I think even a flower essence could be worth trying or a foot bath with a tea. I think that would be something I might want to try with that. I haven't yet because I do love that the tea will open the pores a little bit more and hopefully to help with that cooling effect. Also with the bedtime piece, I found that reminding people to have really natural fibers in their bedding is helpful. And sometimes they need their own blanket and they're like not sharing that body heat. If they have a partner they would sleep with, it can be nice for them to just have their own cotton or silk or wool blanket that can help them with the heat regulation.
I have a question about cortisol testing, Ashley. I find it inconsistent with people's symptoms. Like I question cortisol testing. I find yeah, it just doesn't line up very well, and it's so variable during the day. So, but I want to ask you how much you rely on, or something within that range of checking for cortisol and looking at anxiety.
Yeah, so there's two different ways to do it. There's the way that we do it in clinic, which is just it's a morning blood serum test. And I think that is really variable, but it can give a good baseline, especially if the people have done it like every 6 months or something. But it can change depending on how they slept or if there was a stressful event that morning. But what you can see often is if somebody's cortisol is really low, then it kind of points to that more of an adrenal fatigue picture. And if it's really high, then they're like really going in that direction and you want to coach them to slow things down. So I find it helpful, but a 4-point saliva test for cortisol is definitely the gold standard for getting better results for cortisol. And because we don't do that in the clinic, I don't have as much experience with it, but just from my own research and studies, I see that that would be the better way to go.
Sorry, can you say the name of that test again?
Yeah, it's called a 4-point saliva test where you'd be giving saliva 4 times throughout the day so that it's not just one time, like in the morning, like we do with the blood serum test.
This is about fiber. Do you think well-cooked vegetables do you get a lot more fiber from not cooked vegetables?
I think so, but I think for a lot of people, especially people who have like inflammation in their gut, they're not getting as many nutrients. So I think a combination is really good to try to get both. I think more nutrients from the cooked vegetables, or at least easier to get them in, but I think you're going to get a lot more of the bulk of your fiber from raw plant matter.
Yeah, and
And
mushrooms, I have like a ton of fiber as far as like a high fiber, know, shiitakes and stuff.
yeah, they're great. And people overlook the role of seeds. And I see so many weird trends too, especially in the functional medicine space where like people come in and they're like, "Oh, I've been doing the carnivore diet." And they're just eating like butter and meat and bacon and no vegetables at all. And then it's tricky because they need vegetables, but they can't just jump in because then they get so gassy. So then you really have to help them seed and cultivate their gut more slowly. So that's where the cooked vegetables can be really more beneficial so that they can get used to it. It's more broken down easily. But I love your point about the mushrooms because as we all know, cooked mushrooms are delicious and really nutritious and a great way to get fiber. And if you put them in the sun for a little while first, you can get some vitamin D. So I really like people to think outside of the box when it comes to like people are like veggies. I'm like, no, plants, plants, so many plants, not just veggies. There's grains, there's seeds, there's mushrooms, there's just so many ways to get it. So I know, you have to figure out what works for your clients. Some people don't want to eat grains, but I do tell people every once in a while, maybe have a little bit just so that your body can deal with grains if you do bring them back in. I don't think it's great to be super, super specific about avoiding things unless there's a really good cause. I just want people to be eating, looking at their ancestry a little bit, looking at what works best for them. Food sensitivity stuff. That actually I did want to bring up in perimenopause, we often see more sensitivity to certain foods like gluten. If someone didn't have problems before, they might now. Dairy, drinking red wine, things like this, their body, because there's so many extra hormones, the liver's kind of overloaded and it can be really hard and the gut microbiome takes a hit. So it can be very problematic for people if they continue eating the way they always did before if they're showing signs of sensitivity, which is common. And sometimes just avoiding things for a while and kind of doing some gut repair and then making sure that they're at least eating like whole grain or sourdough or, sprouted, but finding the right ways to do gluten and really realizing that maybe wine isn't going to work for them anymore. And also there's different points in the cycle where if somebody does want to have a drink like right after the period and definitely not at ovulation. Like when there's these big upticks of hormonal surges, that's not the time to be adding more for the liver to process.
I've had some people have luck with burdock root and with apple cider vinegar, just being helpful in that sense of detoxification. And I've also heard, yeah, it being helpful for hot flashes. I'm not sure if that for like certain symptoms like hot flashes and I don't know what else. I guess that's really the only thing, detoxification and hot flashes. But I'm just wondering if anyone else has ever worked with either of those two things for perimenopause or menopause.
Anne Marie, would it be burdock in apple cider vinegar? Like a pepper?
Oh, could be. It could be the combination. I mean, I was just speaking of them separately, but yeah, I do like to make a burdock vinegar. Yeah.
The only way I work with apple cider vinegar is sometimes for people if they're really having a hard time with meal digestion, like 15 minutes before a meal sometimes, but I haven't used it specifically for perimenopause. And I do love the burdock in general. I think that could be really nice and really nourishing for people for perimenopause. So I could definitely see a great place for that.
Yeah, for what Ashley was just speaking to about like any problems with the gut, like to have with the burdock and the apple cider vinegar for helping with the healthy gut microbiome and elimination. So I can see it definitely being part of that team.
I've been reading very slowly a pretty science-oriented book on the microbiome for the past couple of weeks, and fuck, I'm learning a lot.
What book
Well,
is that?
I forget the name of it. It's by Oxford Press. It's a really small book. Somebody sent it to me as a present, and I didn't think I'd read it, but actually, I have to read very slowly. It's just a lot of science terminology. It takes me a while to absorb, but it's the best thing I've ever seen on the microbiome. I'm gonna go get it. I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah, the microbiome is so fascinating and how much it controls our mood and just so much of what goes on. And I love it. And usually I can tell when mine's off. Like, oh, okay. Why am I craving sweets? What, what's going on? Time to give a little love.
So I just have another question for you, Ashley. So if somebody is gonna do like some hormone testing, what are you going to recommend for somebody in like the perimenopause phase to just an idea of it? What are like the top ones that you're gonna look at?
Well, I would either have them do the Dutch test, which is like an out-of-pocket test that's really good for hormones, or I would have them go and have their primary care, or I mean, someone who could help read it. I could sort of help with that if I was seeing somebody, but those tests that I mentioned earlier, which are the LH and FSH, and then the progesterone and estrogen, and that you'd look at the ratio of the progesterone and estrogen to each other, and then you'd look at the levels of the FSH and the LH. And I like to do that day 19 through 21 if possible. Cool. That looks intriguing.
It's a very, it says it's a very short, it says, says it's a very short bio, but actually this person wrote a textbook. So it's only short compared to a textbook. It's actually pretty dense.
Cool.
Angela Douglas, by the way. So,
Okay.
yeah, I would look through it before buying it. There's many others. I just got it in a gift bag. I'm gonna get going. Thank you so much, Ashley, for this. That was really helpful. And
You're
hi,
welcome.
everybody else. And I'm gonna bow out.
Have a good night.
You too. And I'll be in touch.
Okay, perfect.
Find the gut health book on Amazon. Oh, a very short introduction by Anne. That must be it.
Yeah, I bet
Yes,
that.
I found it. I'll drop it in the chat.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for listening and letting me share. I feel like I used to teach at conferences before the pandemic, and I haven't in a while, and I needed this push to just get back in mode. So it was fun for me, and I'm glad that you're all here. And I hope we can keep the conversation going. As in, if you're working with people and have insights, I think it would be awesome to share, and that would be a good way to stay connected in our Manny thread too. Maybe we could have like a perimenopause thread or something.
Definitely.
Oh, a question just popped in my head. Can I circle back with that? Do you find any, I guess, constitutional predictors for whether someone's going to be high estrogen or low estrogen? Like if they tend to run hot, is that going to be in one? Like is there, you say it's so variable, but I was just wondering if there was any sort of like, the Vata Pitta Kapha breakdowns that are like can be used as guidance or
I feel like vatas feel everything more. So that's always, and they're going to be more dry. So you want to keep that in mind for them. Where the pittas probably are going to have a harder time with hot flashes. You think kaphas probably have it the easiest. Um, Talking to family members, like talking to your mom, that kind of thing can be helpful just to hear what it was like for them. There are some indicators of like how perimenopause might affect menopause. Um, like the heavy menstrual bleeding can be a precursor to significant iron loss. So that's something important to keep in mind. And then people whose periods become heavier and irregular, it often means that perimenopause is going to last a little longer. There's a lot that I'm still learning about this. So I feel like that's a really great question. And I know that in Ayurveda, finding that right balance of food and herbs is going to be really important for whatever dosha it is. And the herbs that I chose for this presentation were more the kind that I think would work well for everyone instead of me saying like ashwagandha, because I don't think that would work well for every dosha, where I do feel like shatavari is a little bit more appropriate for each of the doshas. So, yeah, I think ultimately balancing the doshas like you would for any reason is most important, and knowing that like proclivities that each dosha leads to would probably lead to areas of, you know, problematic experiences that are more in line with that would be. So yeah, like the pittas and the heat, it's going to be a little bit more for them. So that's a really good time maybe to take up swimming and doing cold showers and things that are going to help balance them and paying attention to more cooling herbs. I love that way of thinking. Thanks, Jess. Ayurveda is like, I studied with Seven Song first, and that was like such a big gift that he gave to me back then, because that's informed so much of how I see working with people. You know, because it's like, I think about it, and functional medicine is really like taking all those teachings and kind of getting the evidence and then putting a really high price tag on it. Like, well, Ayurveda and TCM, these are the original functional medicines.
Yeah, all these questions are so great. I've been trying to keep up with some of the notes in our Google Doc area. And I'll add some of the books that I brought, like anything by Aviva Ram. Like, so there's this, I don't know if folks have seen the newer one, the Hormone Intelligence, where it's like a lot of meal plan ideas, which I think that's my favorite part about this book, is just all the specific meal plans for like different protocols. And then this is a new textbook called Clinical Herbalism, Plant Wisdom from East and West by Rachel Lord. And this thing is a gold mine.
I haven't
It
seen
came out in 2019, I believe, or 2020. It's more recent. And not just for like women's health or perimenopause, but just as like a general herb textbook. It has a lot of case studies. It has like questions in the back of the chapter it's very comprehensive. So I'm really excited about that one.
AC, what was the name of that one again?
That one is called Clinical Herbalism
Okay,
by Rachel Lord. The subtext is Plant Wisdom from East and West.
thank you.
Yeah. And then there's also this book, The Art and Practice of Spiritual Herbalism by Karen Rose, Empress Karen Rose. She's an herbalist in New York City and teacher. And she has beautiful drawings and a lot of the women's health herbs that we've talked about, motherwort and vitex and burdock and dandelion milk thistle, and doses and preparation and little stories. And so this one's a really beautiful illustrated and written book by Karen Rose. So.
Nice. Thanks for sharing those. Some of those are new to me and look really intriguing.
Absolutely.
I have, of course, I have Aviva's right here. Like, this one's so good. And
Oh yeah. And then the textbook from Aviva.
I don't have the new one. I feel like I need to order that. There's a book that I recommend. Dr. Mindy Pelz is the woman's name. And she has a book on menopause. She also has a book that I love called Fast Like a Girl. And I like that, you know, so many people are into intermittent fasting. And I don't really, so she talks about how you can't do it the same way every week. What I like about her and her work is that it's very much about how different the body is at different times in the cycle, and that even if a person has passed menopause, that they should still be doing things differently and kind of recreating that. So maybe going with the moon cycle at that point and changing the way they're eating. So she has recipes and talks about the different foods that are most appropriate for the different phases of the cycle. And I really love that about her work.
I have a question
Awesome.
that just popped up that I just thought about. Has anyone heard of changes with vision during perimenopause, the perimenopause time? Just like different, I guess, vision in general, but it could be reading or just, regular vision. And yeah.
I've seen a lot with estrogen affecting the eyes as far as dryness. So that in that way can affect vision. Sometimes if people aren't sure a lot of times people are like, oh, my contacts are hurting and I don't know why, or things are different. So sometimes addressing that, them a drop, something to help them with that dryness while the estrogen changes are happening, that can be helpful. But I haven't necessarily seen the vision changes.
I've just been thinking a lot about herbs for the eyes, and if there's any herbal support that could also come into play. But I mean, the balancing, like, of the hormones, I guess, is like the first step, getting to the root of the problem, if that is what's causing it. But then if there are any herbal allies for the eyes, I would just be curious if anyone has worked with any.
Yeah, I mean, bilberry is really good. Lutein is a really good amino acid for the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my two favorites.
Thank you.
Of course.
And then euphrasia eye bright is a eye herb, but mostly for like allergies, inflammation, and conjunctivitis type things. But I think maybe it would be worth a try.
Mm-hmm.
Like eye bright calendula washes if you have dry eyes, like a natural type of eye wash.
Mm-hmm.
And then at my brother's an eye doctor too in Philly, and I remember him telling me that after like a certain point you see in age in like the 40s, you just see a dramatic drop of people who had like perfect vision start to have less than perfect vision, like need reading glasses and things. So it's like men and women. Yeah, so you need to visit Dr. Rob in Philly at C Sharp.
I just turned 42 and all of a sudden I always wore a hat when I'm working outside and I've never been a sunglasses person, but like all of a sudden I'm like I need sunglasses. Like I feel so much more sensitive, and a friend of mine said the same thing. We're around the same age. Like she's like, "Yeah, I was never a person who always had them, but now I need them." And I was like wondering what that. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. Me too. I was always fine with being out in the sun. I liked the sun. I love, but now I'm like, it's too sunny. I need my sunglasses and my hat.
Same.
I just wanted to also drop before we end a link to this herbalist in Pennsylvania who has a business called Nettle Juice. Her name's April. She has a 5-week perimenopause course that I took last year. I think she teaches like cohorts again throughout the year. So, and also a folk herbalism course, but I would recommend the perimenopause class from her. She's a really great herbalist. It's kind of specializes in it. Anyone else have any other like resources that they want to drop in the notes or books? I guess like again, anything Aviva Rom. Her website is also like she has like podcasts and articles and things like that. For sure. All right. I think I'm gonna try to post this recording. I'm not sure how to do it. Like should I just upload it to like my plant cunning YouTube as like a private, only people with the link can see it, and then share that link? Because it's too big of a file to just like email to everybody, Is
Sure,
that the
that
best
sounds
way? Okay, I'll do that.
And do we have a
And
plan for next month? Was there anybody that was wanting to present? I couldn't remember if anyone had said
I
that
don't think we do. We need one.
we need a plan. Who wants to present? Any topics present for anybody that they're feeling passionate about?
Just for like a 20-minute or so talk to instigate a discussion.
And it so doesn't need to to be a PowerPoint. That was my own personal little challenge I made for myself.
What day is it again? It's April. Just looking at the calendar.
The third Wednesday in April. Would that be the 16th then? Yeah,
Yeah, the 16th.
at 6:30. And I'm available to help with like facilitating the Zoom room, making sure we have a Zoom link for it and helping with.
We have presentation like right before that. Oh, I don't know if you can hear me. A few days before on planning your herb garden, and I have actually the presentation already. I've just never like done it in Zoom. Actually, I have done one presentation in Zoom, but I'm just like a little bit nervous about the technology end of it because I haven't done it in so long. Yeah, I
Well,
can
I'd
try.
be happy to do a practice round with you for like 15 minutes sometime before the thing just to see how it works.
Sure. Yeah.
But if you already have the presentation and you're doing it that week, it'll be fresh in your mind. So that sounds amazing.
Yeah, so I could do that. Yeah, no problem. I'll do it.
Yes. Anne Marie. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. I'm also the same way, like Ashley. I don't really love the public speaking, public speaking but I have been doing workshops, but they're very casual. My workshops lately have just been very easy, casual. In person, there's something I don't know, in person I'm better. I just feel like more, I don't know, more interaction. It's just you could read people better, and there's more of a natural like jumping in and out of a conversation than there is on Zoom. But I better do it because we live in a world where Zoom is a thing now. So
Yeah, and I
And
think
a loving group to practice on.
yeah, and hearing you say that is just also such a good reminder of like, yeah, there's some of us that are a little bit more shy or introverted about sharing, but also I love different voices and different people. And you saying, I'm like, I would love to hear you speak and share. And maybe it's not as like, oh yeah, I can't wait for this as it might be for some people, but that's really beautiful too. So thank you for pushing yourself to do it. I think it will be really fun and perfectly timed.
yeah, no problem. Yeah, I really loved your presentation and the topic and everything that you brought to tonight as well. Yeah, such good information.
Good. Thank you. I feel like it's really interesting to work at this clinic and get to see what they're doing. And like, really, my main goal is distilling it into more of a people's medicine because the price tag on the services offered in the functional medicine space are just so unattainable to most people that I love the framework, but I'm like, okay, we need to bring that framework here and make it ours and put the plan to it. So
Yeah.
it's still like forming in my head how to do this medley and this hybrid, but it's been really fun. Because I've also been doing some teaching through holistic health community once a month on like intro to supplementing the diet because they're getting like Fatima, who I know, Anne Marie, she'll get from the food pantries donations of supplements and then she'll have them at people's place in Kingston to give them out, but she feels like negligent in just giving them to people without doing some sort of teaching around how to use it. So I've been looking at what she has and I've been like, oh, okay, magnesium and melatonin. I'm going to do a class on sleep and energy and like just build a class around whatever supplement she has. So we've been doing that once a month and it's been so nice to, like you said, Amory, just to be back in real spaces with people in a room. Oh, it's such a good thing.
Yeah, that's great that you're doing that. And actually, it reminds me that a few people lately have asked me, well, there was one or two women who asked me about doing a class on perimenopause and menopause, just like, herbal support for that. So if you were interested in doing it there, that could be a good community for it. At least with my classes, it's like mostly women, middle age to, elder age who come. A lot of retired women and yeah, so I feel like that would be a really good topic. But I was like, I'm still learning. I don't really feel like I could present on it right now. But this information I think would be wonderful there in that community. I think they would like that.
Be great.
Good idea. Alana, do you know Alana Hensberry? She had asked, actually, now you're reminding me that she had asked about the possibility of doing something on that topic. So
Nice.
On this topic of meeting in public, I just want to share that I was at a really amazing group meeting last Saturday that was herbalists, midwives, and MD and women's health educators who are all like getting together to just talk about how, with the changing laws in place right now, how we can get women access to all of the pregnancy, the herbal preparations or the medical preparations for those of them who were prescribers in the group, like for pregnancy support, postpartum, and pregnancy termination services. So that was a really powerful discussion and group, and I invited them to join Mutual Aid Herbalists of New York. So you might be seeing some people coming in, Polly, who are from that group who are like really looking to connect. And there's a Syracuse study group that happens. And it's a herb study group. And so they have a listserv and would love to collab sometimes on mutual aid efforts. So the tendrils of people doing herbal stuff and medical stuff in New York are they're starting to connect from like the Syracuse side. We have the Hudson Valley, and I'm like Central, Seven Songs in Ithaca, and now we're going to get to the Syracuse area. So that's good.
Love
Great.
that you're having those conversations. I'm so glad. I want us to, I don't feel resourced enough in that area, but I do feel I had with Richard that, you know, as we're working on getting our Herbalist Without Border group formed for our whole area that you just mentioned, because it's like Hudson Valley Catskill, but it's really like anyone who wants to be included. And working with definitely like migrant farmers and people who are probably feeling a lot of fear right now around ICE. And then also giving more access to women in reproductive health are like two of the things that I feel most passionate about. But that area, I'm like, it would be really good to connect with people who are more knowledgeable and resourced about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to help you connect to some of the people.
Thank you. I know the holistic health community is having their first fair on September 13th in like the Ulster Counter area. And I think we'll do like an Herbals Without Borders table there. We want to compile a lot of information and resources for that. And
Awesome. That's great.
everybody who's around should come and it should be a fun day.
And what is the date on that?
September 13th.
September 13th. Cool.
And AC, that group that you just mentioned, does that meet regularly, or was that just a one time?
It was the first time. So yeah, I'm not sure what will come from it. We have an email thread and a signal chat now. So if we do more organizing, I can let you know.
And you said that was in person only, or oh,
Yeah.
okay. In New York City, did you say, or no?
No, in the Adirondack area, like above Utica.
Oh, okay. It'd be a far drive, but that would be a fun trip. It would be, you know.
They also were like, what other women are circling right now, or people are circling right now around women's health? You know, like people in Texas are probably having these same conversations, and how do we connect with people in Texas? And that was kind of similar to how Seven Song brought up last time. Like, how do we make this network have the mycelial roots to like go to places that we don't really know even need help, you know, right? Like Tennessee, he was using as an example last time, but like we could circle up, you know, and like have our own discussion about it and then connect with them too, like in person, like somewhere closer. So like, yeah, the more of these discussions happening, the better.
Yeah, I feel really like we need this so much right now because it feels really hard on a national level to have much of a voice. And I just think if we can build our more than ever, our local circles are going to be the answer.
I agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We'll have to see if we can plan something. Maybe we can see if we can do a summer event for us in person somewhere. I'm happy to host. I mean, a casual kind of thing where we, you know, do a potluck and just get together to share actual in real life space.
Yeah, let's
Yes.
pick a date for that on one of these Wednesdays of the month and when it's like warm enough to hang out around a fire, you know?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, and thank you all for being here. And thank you so much again, Ashley, for all of the information that you shared. It was so amazing. Really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right, have a good night, everybody. See you
Good
next month.
night.
Thank you. And thank you, AC, for facilitating.
No problem.
Yes, AC,
Thank
you're
you.
always so clutch at that. What is the third Wednesday of the month next month?
The 16th, I believe. Yes.
I think that's what we said.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
April 16th, 6:30 to 8. And then Anne Marie, if you have like an event blurb from that you want to share, I'll include that in the email that goes out to invite people.
Sure.
and we can set up a time to practice and make sure you're able to like share screen and be super comfortable with it, and then you'll be like a pro.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no problem. All right, any final thoughts, or should we close the circle for today? Okay. Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.